Making it to the NBA. I mean, that's the ultimate dream, right? You get the fame, the glory, and of course, a multi-million-dollar contract. You're supposed to be set for life. But what happens when all of that just goes away? We're about to break down some of the biggest cautionary tales in the economics of sports. $200 million. Just let that sink in. That's what one of the league's most iconic MVPs earned from his salary and endorsements over his career. I mean, that's an amount of money that's hard to even wrap your head around, let alone spend or lose. And yet, for a shocking number of players, fortunes just like this do disappear. The dream just fades into this really harsh reality of financial trouble. So how does it happen? How does a nine-figure fortune pretty much vanish into thin air? Let's open up the case files. We're going to start with one of the biggest names to ever play the game, a true cultural phenomenon whose financial story is just as dramatic as his play on the court. Of course, we're talking about Allen Iverson, the answer, an 11-time All-Star, league MVP, and a style icon who literally changed the culture of the league. He was easily one of the highest paid and most marketable athletes on the planet in his prime. So on one hand, you have this mountain of cash, over $200 million in career earnings. But on the other hand, just a few years after he hangs up his sneakers, you start hearing these stories about serious money problems. We're talking reports of him being unable to pay off a jewelry debt. The gap between those two realities is just staggering. So where did it all go? Well, the reports paint a picture that is pretty legendary. This wasn't just a few splurges. This was lifestyle inflation on a whole other level. Think fleets of luxury cars, constant jewelry purchases, and financially supporting this massive entourage of friends and family. The spending was apparently so extreme that he reportedly had a $10,000 monthly budget just for bar tabs. 10 grand a month. So what saved him from complete financial ruin? It wasn't some sudden change in spending habits. It was actually a brilliant piece of financial planning from his past, a $32 million trust fund, part of his lifetime deal with Reebok that he can't fully access until he's 55 years old. That was his financial safety net, and a really rare piece of foresight in this whole story. Now, Iverson's story is pretty wild, but the patterns of overspending and bad advice, unfortunately, that's really common. Our next case file shows how different paths can lead to the same financial end, sometimes even faster. Okay, let's talk about Antoine Walker, a 3-time All-Star and an NBA champion who earned over $108 million in salary alone, a massive 9-figure sum. And yet, just 2 years after his career ended, he was filing for bankruptcy with nearly $13 million in liabilities. Walker's case is a textbook example of a perfect financial storm. It wasn't just one thing. It was a combination of risky real estate investments that went south in the 2008 crisis, significant gambling debts, and again, that immense pressure of supporting a huge entourage. Now, to his credit, Walker has since become a really vocal advocate for financial literacy for athletes. Now let's look at another side of this with Shawn Kemp, the Rain Man. He was one of the most dominant players of the 90s, with contracts worth over $90 million. But after his playing days were over, his wealth just evaporated into financial chaos. See, for Kemp, the challenges were different, but just as devastating. His fortune was dismantled not just by lavish spending, but by huge financial obligations from multiple child support payments, combined with a string of failed business ventures and just a general lack of sound money management. It's a powerful reminder that wealth can be eroded from many directions, all at once. But of all the stories, one stands out as the ultimate cautionary tale. It's a moment so infamous it's still discussed today as a lesson in exactly what not to do. Latrell Sprewell, a fiery and incredibly talented player who earned nearly $100 million over his career, $97 million to be exact. His story isn't one of a slow decline, but of a single, catastrophic financial decision. In 2004, his team, the Minnesota Timberwolves, offered him a 3-year, $21 million contract extension, a huge sum for an aging star. He rejected it, delivering this now legendary quote, claiming the offer was insulting and that he had, quote, a family to feed. He never played another game in the NBA. The fallout was swift and it was brutal. Rejecting that $21 million was the beginning of the end. Within just a few years, his multi-million-dollar mansion was in foreclosure. Soon after that, his luxury yacht, named Milwaukee's Best, was repossessed. The financial unraveling was complete and very, very public. These individual stories are powerful, but they all point to a larger systemic problem. So why does this keep happening? Let's zoom out and analyze the common factors that put so many professional athletes in this really precarious position. Well, experts point to 4 key reasons. First, the earning window is incredibly short, which leaves zero room for error. Second, you have young people getting a massive influx of money with very little financial training, a concept we'll explore called sudden wealth syndrome. Third, the social pressure from friends and family to share the wealth is immense. And finally, all this makes them prime targets for bad advice and risky investments that promise quick, unrealistic returns. And this is a real documented phenomenon. Sudden wealth syndrome is the psychological shock and the practical challenge of going from having very little to having millions, almost overnight. Without a plan or discipline, the impulse to spend and the inability to say no can be more of a curse than a blessing. The average NBA career lasts less than 5 years. Think about that. Even for a star player, you're looking at about a decade to earn what needs to last you a lifetime. That money has to fund the next 40, 50, or even 60 years of life. When you see it visually like this, the immense financial challenge becomes crystal clear. There's just no time to recover from major mistakes. So after examining these fortunes won and lost, from $100 million contracts all the way to bankruptcy court, what is the core lesson here? The core lesson is this. Signing the contract, cashing the checks, earning millions, that's just the start of the journey. It is not the finish line. It's the starting gun for a much longer and more complex race. Because in the end, the real challenge, the game that determines long-term security and success, isn't played on the court. It's about managing that wealth for the long haul. That is the real game. And as we've seen, it's one that far too many have lost.